Most people think their life will change when they start making more money. They think the day their income increases is the day stress disappears. They think the day they get a raise is the day they feel secure. They think the day they finally break through is the day they become confident. But here's what actually happens for most people. They earn more, and they still feel stressed. They earn more, and their lifestyle expands. They earn more, and somehow they're still one problem away from panic. Because income doesn't automatically create peace. The real shift comes from something else. It comes from margin. And one of the first times most people ever experience real margin is when they save their first $10,000. Not because $10,000 makes you rich. It doesn't. $10,000 doesn't make you powerful in the way social media pretends. It doesn't buy luxury. It doesn't guarantee freedom forever. But it changes how you feel in your daily life. It changes your nervous system. It changes the way you think. It changes the way you make decisions. And it changes the way you relate to other people. Because if you don't have savings, money controls your mood. And when money controls your mood, it controls your choices. And when your choices are controlled by fear, you end up building a life that's smaller than it should be. Today, I'm going to explain exactly how everything changes after you save $10,000. Not in a motivational way, not in a fantasy way, in a real way. The kind of real change you notice on a random Tuesday morning when you wake up and you realize you're not anxious anymore. If you want to learn money the simple way, subscribe to this channel. We post videos every single day. And comment below. Seriously, I want to read it. If you had $10,000 saved right now, what would change in your life immediately? Would it be your stress level, your relationship, your job choices, your confidence? Let's talk about it. Before you save $10,000, most people live in survival mode. And survival mode is weird because it becomes normal. You get used to it. You stop questioning it. You start believing that constant pressure is just adult life. But survival mode has a cost. It costs your mental clarity. It costs your patience. It costs your long-term planning ability. And it costs your relationships. Here's what survival mode looks like. You check your bank account more than you should. You do math in your head every time you buy something. You hesitate on normal purchases. You feel guilt when you spend money even on essentials. And it's not just about the numbers. It's about the feeling that one unexpected expense could knock you off balance. A car repair, a medical bill, a broken phone, a rent increase, a sudden trip you didn't plan for. When you don't have savings, these things aren't just inconvenient, they feel like threats. And when your brain feels threatened, it doesn't think clearly. Your brain starts focusing on short-term relief. That's why people in survival mode do things like putting emergencies on credit cards, taking bad loans, saying yes to toxic jobs, staying in relationships they know are wrong, or avoiding risks that would actually help them long-term, or taking risks that are desperate and reckless. Because survival mode makes you either too cautious or too impulsive, and both can destroy your future. Let me give you a real example. Imagine your car breaks down. If you have no savings, your brain goes, okay, what bill am I not paying this month? Or who can I borrow money from? Or how do I survive this without it turning into a disaster? But if you have savings, even if it still hurts, your brain goes, all right, annoying, let's fix it. The problem doesn't disappear, but the emotional weight disappears. That's what margin does. Now here's the part most people don't understand. Saving $10,000 isn't just a financial milestone, it's a psychological milestone. Because once you have it, you stop living like the world is about to collapse. You stop bracing for impact all the time. And that changes everything. Quick summary of part 1. Before $10,000, life feels fragile. After $10,000, life feels stable enough to breathe. After you save $10,000, you don't magically become a different person overnight, but something subtle happens. You start responding to life like a calm adult instead of a stressed survivor, because now you have margin. Problems become problems again, not catastrophes. And this matters because panic is expensive. Panic makes you overpay. Panic makes you accept bad deals. Panic makes you rush decisions. Think about how many people pay extra money simply because they're in a hurry. They pay for convenience because they have no buffer. They pay interest because they have no savings. They pay penalties because they were already stressed. They make choices that cost them long-term because they need relief now. $10,000 creates breathing room, and breathing room creates patience, and patience creates power. Here's another example. Let's say you lose your job. If you have no savings, you accept the first offer that comes, even if it's bad, even if it drains you, even if it pays poorly, even if it puts you in a worse long-term situation, because you're scared. But if you have savings, you can take a beat. You can search longer. You can negotiate. You can be selective. You don't have to say yes to the first lifeboat that passes by. And that is real freedom. Not just private jet freedom, real freedom. Quick summary of Part 2. $10,000 doesn't eliminate problems. It eliminates panic. Before $10,000, your decisions are mostly defensive. You're trying to avoid mistakes. You're trying to avoid falling behind. You're trying to avoid pain. So every decision becomes a fear-based calculation. Can I afford this? What if something happens? Will this mess me up? But after $10,000, something changes. You start asking better questions. Is this worth it? Does this align with my goals? Is this something future me will thank me for? Is this a good trade of money for time? Is this actually improving my life or just distracting me? This is when you start acting like a person with a plan. And the difference is massive, because people who are constantly asking, "Can I afford it?" tend to live reactionary lives. They buy based on emotion. They avoid planning because planning feels pointless. They focus on short-term comfort. But people who ask, "Should I?" are thinking long-term. They start building systems. They start thinking in priorities. They start making choices that compound. Let's talk about compounding in a real-life way. Compounding is not only about investments, it's about habits. When you have savings, you're calmer. When you're calmer, you make better decisions. When you make better decisions, you waste less money. When you waste less money, you save faster. When you save faster, you invest sooner. When you invest sooner, you build wealth. It becomes a positive loop, and it often starts with that first real buffer. Quick summary of Part 3. Before $10,000, fear-based decisions. After $10,000, value-based decisions. This is one of the most underrated parts. When people talk about money, they talk about numbers. But money is emotional. Money affects how you sleep. Money affects how you argue. Money affects how confident you feel. Money affects whether you feel safe. When money is tight, your nervous system is on high alert. Even if you don't notice it, it's there. You might feel irritable for no reason, tired all the time, anxious at night, short-tempered with people you love, mentally foggy, unmotivated because you feel stuck. And people don't connect it to money because it's not dramatic. It's constant. It's like background noise. After you save $10,000, a lot of that background noise fades. Not completely, but enough to notice. You stop living with that daily fear of what if something happens. Because if something happens, you can handle it. That changes your personality. You're more patient. You're more present. You're less reactive. And ironically, that makes it easier to earn more money too. Because calm people negotiate better. Calm people plan better. Calm people don't sabotage themselves. Quick summary of Part 4. Savings don't just protect your money. They protect your mind. This is the part most people either ignore or avoid because it's uncomfortable. But it's true. Money changes relationships, not because money makes you better than others, but because money creates independence. And independence changes power dynamics. When you don't have savings, you can become trapped in situations that you know are unhealthy. It can happen in romance. It can happen in friendships. It can happen in family. It can happen at work. Let's start with romantic relationships. If you have no money saved, leaving is expensive. Breaking up might mean moving costs, deposits and rent, furniture, transportation, legal costs, or simply the fear of being alone financially. So, people stay. They stay in relationships that drain them. They tolerate disrespect. They tolerate manipulation. They tolerate imbalance. Not because they're weak, because they don't have options. Now imagine having $10,000 saved. Suddenly, leaving isn't impossible. You don't have to stay because you need help paying bills. You can stay because you actually want to stay. And that changes your standards, because now you're not negotiating with fear. You're negotiating with self-respect. The same is true with friendships. When you're broke, you might keep friends who are bad influences because you're afraid of losing your social circle. When you're stable, you can be selective. You can choose relationships that build you, not drain you. And then there's family. Family dynamics can be complicated. Sometimes people tolerate disrespect from family because they depend financially. $10,000 doesn't solve every family issue, but it gives you enough independence to set boundaries. Now let's talk about work relationships. When you have no money, your boss has more power over you than they should, because you can't afford to say no. You can't afford to push back. You can't afford to leave. But when you have savings, you carry yourself differently. You don't tolerate disrespect. You don't accept unreasonable demands. You negotiate better because you're not desperate. And here's the key idea. Money doesn't buy love, but lack of money can trap people in bad situations. Savings gives you options. Options give you dignity, and dignity improves relationships. Quick summary of Part 5. Before $10,000, relationships can be survival-based. After $10,000, relationships become choice-based. One of the biggest changes after $10,000 is not what you can buy, it's what you can refuse. Before savings, people say yes out of fear. They say yes to bad jobs, bad deals, bad commitments, bad friends, bad relationships, bad spending habits, because saying no feels risky when you have no buffer. But after $10,000, you can pause. You can evaluate. You can walk away. And this matters because your life is built more by what you reject than what you accept. If you accept everything, you get dragged into everything. If you can say no, you stay in control. And control is the foundation of stability. People underestimate how expensive desperation is. Desperation makes you buy things you don't need. Desperation makes you accept low pay. Desperation makes you ignore red flags. Desperation makes you rush decisions. Savings reduces desperation, and reducing desperation is like upgrading your entire operating system. Quick summary of Part 6. Savings buys you the right to walk away. Here's something people don't expect. Once you reach $10,000, saving the next amount often becomes easier. Not because you suddenly become disciplined overnight, but because you stop resetting. When you have no buffer, every emergency sends you back to zero. You save a little, then life happens, then you're back at zero. It feels pointless, and when something feels pointless, people quit. But once you have a buffer, emergencies don't wipe you out, so your progress sticks. That creates momentum, and momentum is addictive in a good way. You start enjoying saving because you can see your stability growing. Now investing also changes. When people invest without savings, every market dip feels like danger because they might need that money, they might have to sell, they might panic. But with savings, you can invest with patience. You can ride out volatility. You can think long-term. And long-term thinking is where wealth is built. Quick summary of Part 7. Savings creates momentum. Momentum makes investing possible. Seeing $10,000 saved changes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who's barely surviving. You start seeing yourself as someone who can build. That identity shift is powerful because identity drives behavior. If you believe you're always behind, you'll act behind. If you believe you're capable, you'll act capable. After $10,000, you realize you can delay gratification. You can build discipline. You can create stability. You can follow through. And that confidence spills into other areas. You negotiate better. You speak with more certainty. You plan long-term. You stop feeling ashamed of money conversations because now you have proof that you can do hard things. Quick summary of Part 8. $10,000 isn't just money, it's evidence. At the end of the day, the biggest change is simple. Life feels lighter. You still have problems, you still have goals, you still have stress sometimes, but you don't live in that constant fear anymore. You stop feeling like everything is fragile. You start feeling like you can handle life, and that feeling is rare. Most people don't know what it's like to be calm about money. They think anxiety is normal, but it doesn't have to be. Quick summary of Part 9. You don't become rich, you become steady. Saving your first $10,000 won't make you wealthy, but it will change your life. It gives you margin, it gives you control, it gives you choices, it reduces panic, it reduces desperation, it reduces the emotional weight of daily life. And that's why this milestone matters so much. If this video helped you see money differently, subscribe to Money Habits with Alex. We post every single day, and we talk about money the simple way. No hype, no fake motivation, just habits that actually work. Now comment below. Are you working toward your first $10,000, or have you already crossed that line? And if you're not there yet, remember this. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to do it fast. You just have to keep moving forward, because once you get there, everything really does change.